further ado, I would like to introduce and simultaneously thank today's panelists. We have directly to the left of me, Ms. Jasmine Russell, CEO and co-founder of Monocat Data. In the middle, we have Ariel Daya, founder of SID Technologies. And on the end, we have Brian Parker, owner of the Parker House Group. All right. So now we'll get started with questions. So panelists, starting with Jasmine, we'll start off by asking each of you to share a little bit about your personal backstory, your business, and why you decided to become an entrepreneur.
Okay, hello everybody. Jasmine Russell, I'm originally, I guess a good place to start is from Indiana. So I've been here 8 years within the Twin Cities. I came up after finishing up grad school, finishing up my MBA, and then got started within analytics. And so for me, analytics has always been about like telling a story. How do you connect with the data? How do you connect with the people? And so after doing some agency work during grad school, because I did a part-time MBA, and then also doing a mix of agency and corporate work here in the Twin Cities, then I was like, you know what? I really want to study data that I care about. And so that first starting point was really with acknowledging the economy of the space here. So there are a lot of artists and creative groups that didn't always have a technology person or a data person in-house. And so we started off helping those groups as our core focus at Monocat Data. But since then, it's branched out to marketing teams, nonprofits, product and design, and also that's what's inspired us to build our first SaaS data platform that just released in October, Sunset.io. And I do have some QR codes that are around the space for folks. So for me, becoming an entrepreneur was more of like I'd say like a brain exercise where I was studying a lot of good data at Jostens. I was doing a lot of good study with data within corporate and agency work, but I wanted to actually focus on data and insights that I cared about. And now that's gotten to the point with Sunset.io where it's about the simplicity of data and bringing that to the users that utilize the platform.
Okay, same question for me. All right, so my background is primarily in the entertainment space. I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm an immigrant, and one of my biggest dreams as a kid was to make movies. So at 18, I went off to LA to La La Land, and I did exactly that, made movies. I worked for some of the network studios, Sony, CBS, NBC, and my core work in that space was social media. So social media is really where my professional career lies. I did go to Cal State Northridge where I got my BA in electronic media management. And that kind of morphed into, with electronic media management, a little bit like what Jasmine is doing with analytics, but it's more with audience analytics, assessing a live audience engagement and also online and broadcast audience engagement. And that morphed into, engaging on social platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and being really creative in that way. Why did I decide to become an entrepreneur? My decision to become a business owner was more or less a decision to control my own professional trajectory, my personal and professional trajectory. I knew at a certain point that I was only going to get so far, and I wanted to really make more money, make my own decisions, grow, and it wasn't happening fast enough for me in the entertainment world. So I had an opportunity to help a friend out with some YouTube work, and that kind of just morphed into consulting, and my business was born from there. Now, I was in the marketing space. I've pivoted from the marketing space into the software space with SID Technologies. We are leveraging linguistic science, data science, and machine learning to mitigate biases within systems and institutions. Our first iteration actually assesses body cam footage from police officers and uses that information to inform training, as well as give their heads of department, police chiefs, a heads up when an officer has reached a threshold of misconduct. So.
I'm Brian. I'm a realtor, broker of the Parker House Group, partnered with Coldwell Banker Realty. I started this business November of '92. I started when I was a child. They don't have child labor laws in this industry, but as far as wanting to be entrepreneur, growing up I used to want to be a architect, and so kind of just liking designs of buildings and homes and stuff like that kind of drew me towards real estate, as well as accompanying my father on a few deals he did, and just that negotiating side of things that kind of made me want to get involved in the sales. I like the negotiation part. I had no idea that I would be a realtor back then. I just thought maybe I wanted to be an architect, but math wasn't my strongest suit at the time. I thought maybe I probably wouldn't be able to do that. And so anyway, about the time I would have graduated from college is when I got my real estate license. I had a number of regular jobs, but I was raised with the idea and the attitude of you need a career. You should be working for yourself, basically. And you know, I wanted to be in business for myself. And you hear people all the time, I'm going to school for business, blah, blah, blah. But business is everything. Everything is a business. So I found something that I like, and like they say, if you're doing what you like to do, you're not working a day in your life. And I enjoy what I do. It's different every situation, every transaction is like a fingerprint, so there's no two things alike. So in all the years that I've been doing this coming November will be 30 years in it, I still feel like I'm new, because it's always evolving, always something different with technology and social media and all those things. I mean, there's always something. So again, me wanting to be an entrepreneur had a lot to do with being in control of my life. You know, I really strive more so for lifestyle, not so much to be, if that makes any sense. And this afforded me to do so, or affords me to do so. I think that answers the question.
Perfect. So you talked about the motivation behind becoming an entrepreneur, a little bit about the business itself. Can you talk about the beginning of the journey? We hear a lot about how entrepreneurship is scary or is challenging, or you know, the 10 to 10 instead of the 9 to 5. Can you speak a little bit to what it was like to officially start your business, decide to work for yourself, how you got started, continue to stay motivated knowing the potential obstacles that were to come? We can start with Brian this time.
Well, it was exciting at first, obviously, right? You're wide open, you're fresh, you're new. It was a mindset change too, because I'm assuming I'm working for. And once you get started in real estate, you have to work with a brokerage for a minimum of 2 years before you can be a broker on your own. And those first 2 years, you're learning like an apprentice, if you will, or something like that. You're kind of learning how things go, what's happening. It's a lot of trying it all until you see what works in this business. So there was a lot of so-called challenges I didn't notice at the time, because I was so determined to do this. This is what I wanted to do. So I understand that there's a lot of no's before you get the yeses. I mean, I learned, you know, right when I was thinking about getting into it, I wasn't quite sure exactly how it goes. I just signed up for class and listening to a few people who had no idea telling me how it goes. So learning that, you know, how commissions work and the fact that you eat what you kill, you know, there's not a hourly pay or anything like that. But I endured it, I wanted to do it, so my determination kept me at it. I think that answers it.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so my journey. The journey around my entrepreneurship, Can you repeat the question?
Yes, absolutely. So, just talk about what it's like to officially start your business, decide to work for yourself. How did you get started? Stay motivated, knowing the obstacles that could have came.
Okay, so when I started my first business, it was purely by accident. I was helping a friend out, like legitly, like helping her out, and her company paid me for it, and they paid me really well. I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to get paid. But okay, so this is a thing, and that's when I discovered consulting. I didn't know what consulting was initially up until that point. Initially, the path was accidental, and then from there, it became more intentional. I did take some classes. I sought out mentors. My mentors have been amazing. If you can find a mentor, get one. Now, you're in high school, if you can find one, get a mentor. Your mentors are everything. They open doors for you. They're able to give you some insights into some mistakes that they made so that you can avoid those mistakes. And they help you get a fast track to, whatever you're doing. So my mentors were helpful in the beginning of my journey. And with my second business, there's a lot of self-learning, a lot of research. So it's been as you said, since you have to, with entrepreneurship, the rewarding part of it for me is that I get to control things, right? Control the work, my creativity, my space. I get to control that, whereas in corporate America, I didn't have much control over those things, right? So the rewarding part for me, although it's a much, it's more than 10 to 10. It's more like 24/7. So you're constantly, everything that I do, everything that I consume is related to work. I don't know how to explain that. It's somehow related to work. I find some way to bring it back to my work. And that can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, it's been a rewarding process, but it's incredibly hard work. But the great part of it is that you get to build your own generational wealth versus working for someone else's generational wealth.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's like, how do you get started? And so when I think about the start of Monacat Data, for a while it was like a concept in my mind. Like, okay, yes, it would be nice to work with these creative orgs on their data and technology needs. And so actually what I did is, there was like a night, there's this group I used to be with called Gravity. And there was a night where it was like, hey, just pitch your idea. And I'd literally written down the concept for Monacat Data on a notepad, like a piece of paper. And so first thing I think was the name. So my middle name is Monique. So Monacat, I wanted something kind of feminine. I was like, okay, feline cat, that's a thing. But now it's become like a person, or sometimes we call our teammates like Monacat. So it has its own little connotation to it now. But at the time, I was like, well, let me just pitch this idea and see if people would actually like it. And it was just, on paper, literally reading it, it wasn't planned, but there was a decent response to it. That night, what I did is I went back home and I was like, let me just create a landing page for it. Let me actually see if people would like this beyond this room. So I went on the Squarespace, created a quick landing page, maybe 2 other pages of contact us. And what I did is I actually shopped that page. So I knew I needed to talk with arts orgs, I needed to talk with creative orgs. And so we literally, being as ignorant as we were, me and Cassie, we shopped it out to Springboard for the Arts, the Minnesota State Arts Board. We forecast public art, theaters around town, and literally asked them, if this was a thing, would you want it? And what was crazy is we got interviews with nearly all the major groups. And we were so like ignorant and young to the space, like we didn't really realize there was a big need for that. And so everyone we reached out to was like, we've been waiting for someone to focus on us in this. And also like some meetings, like meeting with like the leads of the state arts board, we came in there like, yep, this is our concept, this is our page, and they wanted more experience. And so there were some learnings of like, okay, some folks, we're learning we can get a meeting, but we're not actually prepared for it. And so I think for us, what really helped us in that first year was we were so ignorant in the best way. And I always say it's nice to just kind of be a little bit out of it where you don't know everything that's going on, because then you're more fearless. Then you're like, you know what? I don't know these people and I have nothing to lose, so let me just talk to them. And honestly, most of the time people will just talk to you about your concept. So I should mention like our people. We have, over the past few years as a service group, hired about 15 contractors. And now that we're narrowing down our team here for the platform, there's just 6 of us now, so a core focus group. And what we learned is we would always have a project manager on every project. We always would need some type of tech person, some type of data analyst for a project. We may need some type of creative, but like that PM, analyst, tech, and then someone who's like a little bit creative, that was our formula for nearly every project. Whether it was me and Cassie and a contractor doing it, or like in the beginning, like a lot of me kind of moving through stuff until I was like, I don't have enough time to do all these things. We have to hire folks. So I feel like that's half the balance in the beginning, like managing your time and also getting past like, I need to have everything perfect to actually act and get out there. It's like, yeah, you could do that, but there are also a lot of folks that are so underprepared and are getting opportunities just because they reach out.
Perfect. Thank you. And so I want to go back to something, Ari. You mentioned having a mentor. Within many communities, specifically the Black community, there's sometimes a limitation of access and exposure to industries just because there's so few individuals that look like the young people in those industries. Can you talk to what it's like finding a mentor? How do you go about finding a mentor? And then how do you go about having a healthy relationship with that individual within that mentor-mentee relationship? Because oftentimes, even if you can find a mentor, you may be apprehensive about reaching out 6-7 times a day, asking questions or things of that nature. So can you talk to what it's like to find a mentor, and then what it's like to maintain and sustain that relationship? And then Brian and Jasmine, if you have additional context after.
Well, I reached out to people. So I'm also the kind of person, when I read an article, I pull names out, and I also go on LinkedIn and look them up and connect with them. It's never too early as a high school student to do that. Use LinkedIn as a friend of yours. If there's someone doing something that you would like to do, and that's how I approached it. I wanted to get into, with my marketing agency, I wanted to get into a specific space working with enterprises. So I started to attend certain events, and I identify some of the key players at those in those ecosystems. And I asked. If you don't ask, you got to ask. The worst that can happen is say no, and you're back to the same place that you started. So ask. And how do I maintain a balance? So for SID Technologies, they're not mentors, they're advisors now for my business. And I had the same approach where I asked, but because they're such busy people and they have their own businesses and their own priorities, I'm very respectful of their time. So I try to have set, whether it's monthly check-ins, on the calendar, and make sure you're on time, make sure you're very specific about what you're trying to get out of that conversation for that hour so that you maximize that time. And that's how I've been able to manage balance and and the relationships. Yeah, I don't know if you two have anything to add.
Well, mentoring is everything. That's actually kind of the way the Parker House Group was born. At first, I was just Brian Parker, the realtor, and as time was going on, things were picking up. I needed to duplicate myself somewhat, but also I didn't want to hire somebody. I didn't feel comfortable doing that yet as an assistant, as you would say, and I thought, well, I'd like to give back, right? So I figured if I could hire on newer agents, I could mentor them. I didn't quite have this same mentorship. Like you said, there wasn't many of us of color doing this when I started. When I started, I could say honestly, here in the Twin Cities, it was probably like a couple dozen black people being realtors. And so some of the other people, this is one of those businesses where you're in competition too. So it's kind of tough to kind of mentor with be a mentor, have your competition be your mentor, right? So I did have a good mentor. He was a guy who actually partnered with me when I first started the broker that I went to. And so I just thought that I should just be the best example I can be in the business, and hiring on people to kind of help them where business would otherwise fall off the table. I was an example for them, modestly, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I appreciate that you guys are listening to me, but I did have some to show, some to give. So being a mentor, having examples is very, very important, and showing that it's possible, just we're that tangible idea of whatever is on someone's mind as far as what they want to do. And I mean, it is flattering to be in that position to give somebody so much that they can work with to grow in their lives as well. So I think that all I have.
Yeah, I mean, building off that, I guess I want to talk about the mentee relationship for a minute, because I just recently got what I would consider my first mentee. Like, there's all kinds of folks, but like a younger mentee. And I felt like it happened really organically, and she's so full of energy. She's like, Jasmine, I feel like we should do a coffee. I feel like I want to know more about you. And I was like, all right, we can do that. Let's go to coffee. And it's been so nice, because I feel like as a mentor, like, you can remember some of those moments, like, and moving through it and talking through the process and just all those things where it's like she has so many fresh ideas. But then also at the same time, I feel like there's a sweep too, where you could be a mentor to someone who's older, or a mentor to someone who's in another field. And so it's like there are so many crossovers, but that back and forth between mentor and mentee, and like just the energy that like each gives, I feel like that needs to be there. And when I think about my mentors, honestly, a lot of them I've met through either some kind of community event. I was helping to organize a networking event that has led to like board positions and different boards I've been on. I think within entrepreneurship, it's important to, yes, you gotta be focused on your work, but also outside of your work, what are your community passions? For me, it's hiking and outdoors. So it's like when the Minneapolis Parks Foundation Board was like, hey, you wanna be on this board? It's like, yes, of course I would wanna do that. And then it's just like your passions and your work just kind of blend in together, and you have a different networking connection point. And because you gotta have more than just work to talk about with your mentor. You've gotta be able to talk about like your life holistically. Where do you want that to go? And a good mentor or advisor, they're gonna walk alongside you on that path so that you can really get to that next level with your whole life intact, not just working all the time, but like your whole life intact that keeps you happy and proves some good results for your business as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I feel like that's a good segue into the next question, which is showing up as your authentic self when doing business. So what does that look like for you, and how do you do it even if it makes others uncomfortable? Also, how do you encourage others to do it? So if you have mentees, how do you encourage them to show up with their true selves in spaces, even if it makes others uncomfortable? And whoever would like to take it first, feel free.
Because of the space that I find myself currently, SID Technologies is really focused on mitigating biases within systems and institutions, starting with the criminal justice system. And a lot of the issues that I'm tackling makes people uncomfortable. It's racially driven, it's bias, all the isms. And one of the things I've learned to do since 2020, especially after George Floyd, is speak my mind, right? Speak up. And that can be very challenging and scary, and it was for me. But I've been led by my emotions, my passion for justice, my passion for equity and equality. So it's hard for me to shut up when that comes into play. So it just comes out, it's like vomit, I just, so if you're let your passion lead you. I think if your passion is, as Jasmine said, with the outdoors and with nature, she allowed that to lead her. She's passionate about that, and that led her into spaces and into networks and ecosystems that she wasn't in before, and it just opened the doors in the world for her. Same here. I mean, following my passion led me to MIT's incubator. Led me into having advisors that are DOJ and working with people that I never dreamed of working with in my life. I never thought I would be in the space, but because I did speak up, one thing that a third grade teacher said to me, and I'll never forget it, she basically told me that if you don't speak up and if you don't stand for anything, like you're not starting with anything. So the fear around, the fear is about loss. But if you're starting with nothing, you have nothing to lose, right? So my fear in 2020 was that I would alienate people by speaking my mind, right? And then I thought, are these people that I care to embrace me anyway? If this fact offends them, are these people that I really want in my life anyways? So that's a question you have to ask yourself as well.
Repeat the question again, because there's more to your question.
Yeah, so you want to speak to showing up as your authentic self when doing business. So what does it look like for you, and how do you do it even if it makes others uncomfortable, as well as how do you encourage others to do so?
Well, showing up in this business, it's one of those things where you there's a lot of no's before yes. So again, passion is everything. I tell a lot of people when they're asking about getting involved in this industry, I'm like, well, first of all, what is your purpose, right? And so once they know their purpose, besides a paycheck, of course, then showing up every day becomes you want to sharpen up, and professionalism speaks for itself. So no matter where you are on the spectrum, professionalism is number one. And to keep showing up that way and practicing that, and you can be your authentic self and stand on your beliefs and your convictions and your values, and then you can see where your business and your purpose helps in that movement of like what we've just gone through with the uprise and all those kinds of things. For instance, my industry, we're hearing the buzzword all the time, generational wealth right now. Well, this is a step forward moving forward in that, because the unrest has so much to do with opportunities not being available, economically being handicapped and whatnot. But now with all the programs out there, I mean, a person getting a house with a minimum of $1,000 or so. So it's the myths of how much you need to be involved to begin this piece. I mean, a lot of my people are first generation homeowners. So, and again, that part of my pay is being involved in that, and I appreciate the honor of being involved in that. But that allows people to stand up for themselves. I mean, I don't care what color you are. Actually, it's homeownership and landowning, they've made all the decisions from the beginning when America was being colonized and founded. You know, if you didn't own land, you had no rights, you couldn't vote, you had no say-so. So it's still to this day kind of the same thing. If you own a home, you get a certain different piece of mail than a renter does regarding what's going on in the community, what's happening, what developments are going to be like and whatnot. You get a say-so. That's wealth. You get to put your 2 cents in when it's time to say something about what's going on in your world. So showing up as your authentic self, like I said, if someone knows their passion, why they want to do this, just be professional, try to be the expert in this field, but you don't have to compromise yourself to do so. Just stay professional, make sure your purpose is in line with it, and that should help you be your authentic self throughout this.
I think it's definitely taken me a second to like get to the point where it's just like, yep, okay, Jasmine, you are quirky, you are a little bit spacey sometimes, but you're also like very focused in meetings. You can work for hours, and you're very strategic. And now you need to fuse all those things together and make it make sense. And honestly, when I first started off in analytics, like I didn't have that, because there's that, of course, like, okay, I'm a Black woman in analytics, but also like I was afforded a lot of opportunities very young. So like I finished my MBA at 25. When I went into agencies and kind of did some different work, I was always within a small to mid-sized agency. So I was always reporting directly to like the lead or directly to like the owner of the company. And then from agency work, then going into corporate, whatever I was doing was working, as far as like how I saw things and understood things. And that was my first point. I had to own that, because it was like, okay, I'm a Black woman here doing this. There's already pushback, but there's already pushback as an analyst. So it's like double pushback, because of course everybody wants to see the numbers they see, but you especially, I think, have to have tough skin as a Black woman to decipher between, are they being more, are they being sharper in this conversation because they just want better results? Are they being sharper because they maybe have something personal? That's really hard to do as an analyst, period. But you have to be able to decipher, because ultimately you have to make some decisions. So for me, perfectionism, it just came with the role. And I had to kind of like break through that at some point and say like, but my counterparts over here are not perfect. So if I want to break through perfectionism, when I'm delivering results, I have to be authentic. When I'm delivering results, I have to show how things are relating. And then as I started to do more of that, I could bring in my personality. And when I think about some of the high school students that are listening, I think there's like the struggle between, how do I make my personality fit with my career? Because there's so much of what's visually online of, this is your personality, or this is what you like to present. And even as adults, it's like that filters into our careers now, like how do I make this match here? And for me, the through line within my career has always been data. It's like things can change, you can change industries, but it's always been data. And it gives you an opportunity to say, all right, this is constant, but my personality can shift in different ways. And I think there's a boldness to that, of saying like, I'm okay with not knowing exactly how everything fits. And sometimes people pop around for a bit in the beginning to figure out what's going on. But I really feel for students now, because I think there's even more pressure to make things match, versus you can still have your personal life online, and you can also have a career that maybe is a little bit different, and then try to fuse, that's the goal, like to make everything fuse together so that you're actually bringing in both and you're not having to sway from side to side.
Thank you.
And if I can add something to what Jasmine just said, one of the things, my takeaway from that is change is constant. So don't be afraid to change either, so yeah.
With change is growth, actually. So you're going to grow into whatever it is you're doing it to, and you're going to be that authentic you, but there's growth in all of this. It's a journey, right? Life is not a destination, it's a journey. So there you go.
I like how y'all did that. And that's a perfect transition once again into the next question. And if you have a counterpoint to this question, please feel free to share that as well. But all of you have some form of marketing experience, either past or present, which is important in the social media era. Can you speak to how you've developed your personal brand and made yourself marketable while holding steadfast to your values and your mission in life? Again, whoever would like to take this first, feel free.
Well, when I started, there was no social media, so it was a little tougher to get going, we thought, right? Or we didn't know any different. Ignorance is bliss. And personally, again, I just brought the professionalism as best I could to the industry. Again, I felt like because most of the time I was the only one in the room, I had all eyes on me, so I really needed to stand out and make a good impression. So once social media began, and I remember a lady from the marketing department of my brokerage calling, and I thought it was just a random phone call, like, let's go have lunch or whatever. Hey, you should get on Facebook. You should do it. I'm like, whatever. I'm busy, right? And finally I looked into what she was telling me. Yeah, you can get business, blah, blah. So, okay, I thought it was more like a business page, right? Back then there was MySpace, which Facebook seems to be more like now, and LinkedIn is more like what Facebook was meant to be. But long story short, there's so many different platforms and there's so much of that going on. It has been difficult to keep up with because you kind of constantly want to keep yourself in front of people and relevant, and making sure the information you're giving is not boring, it's not too long, it's not too short, it's not too vague, but also you got to be personable. And so marketing, I've been just trying to be present more so, and again, it's like I'm glad that it's here now, because at one point we didn't have it, so it does make it a little easier. I hope this doesn't offend, but I hate doing open houses, so this is a better way of being present, right? And I don't know, I guess that's my best way of putting it, but marketing myself to make sure that people see that there are people like us doing this. That's been very, very important to me, more so. Also, obviously, I'd like to get some business out of it, but branding, you know, is what it's doing, right? People are recognizing the name, they're recognizing my logo, my slogan, those kinds of things now. And I'm really kind of freaked out sometimes when people I don't know can walk up to me and repeat my slogan to me or whatever. They know who I am and I don't know them. It's weird, but it's the day we're in, right?
Yeah. When I think about branding, or when I started my business, I think what's interesting is, so I am a blogger. Like, I've always been that person that like looks up the blogs, reads the blogs, like, just like, that's just like my fun thing to do. And so I've started many a fun blog just in my spare time. But I can remember in 2014 when I started working for a corporation that recruited me here, Navitor, and then I had some like previous agency work. I felt like I had all these thoughts like stored up in my mind of just like data woes and data like problems and data issues. And so I started this blog called The Data Minimalist, and I think it was Squarespace. And I was just like, all right, I'm gonna just write a post about a data issue, and I'm gonna put like some type of data graph picture up top and talk about it and relate it to like a linear correlation, but really it's like a workflow of some point. And with LinkedIn being out around that time, then I was like, oh, well, let me take the blog post here, put it on LinkedIn, and then redirect people to the blog, and then they can kind of like see what I think about stuff. And honestly, that's how I got some of my first speaking engagements was from that blog and posting on LinkedIn about like data problems and data woes. What changed for me was I started to get asked to speak quite a bit, especially in 2016, and I lost track of it. So then I was like, well, let me create a page, a professional page that I still have now at jasminerussell.work. And that's like 2 pages, and on one page it has all of my speaking engagements that I've done from like 2016 to now. It has some like media images, and then it has links to different work. And so in thinking about marketing, marketing is all about funneling. So how can you get people into that sales funnel? And it's different when you think about yourself as a brand. It's like, if I was to get someone into my sales funnel as a brand, what would that look like? And what would I have them see? For me, it's like, all right, you're gonna see my speaking engagements, but you're also gonna see any businesses I'm involved in. You'll also see any boards that I've been involved in. You'll see past things, you'll see present things, and it also keeps it simple. So I think when you think about that, and how you're funneling, it makes your life easier, but it also is a good tracking point, because I can see some years, like the first year of the business, 2017, it was crazy the amount of speaking engagements. It's like a time capsule. And it's like, why was I doing that much? Oh, because I was trying to get the business out there. Versus now where it's like more selective, where maybe I'll do 1 a month because you need time for the business to actually do that. So I always encourage folks to have fun with it. Like, you are your brand, but you're also like a person too. So you should have fun and just putting it out there and giving people proper links so that they can get to where they need to go with you and your business professionally as an entrepreneur.
Thanks, Jasmine. I am actually learning quite a bit about branding from Jasmine, because we're in the same space, personal branding. My background is in my background professionally is in social media, so social media is my sweet spot. And with social media, specifically the comments section, I go deep on the comments, and that's where I get a lot of like ideas on topics to talk about and even write, blog about. For me, my personal branding actually is happening offline rather than online, oddly enough. Like Jasmine, if you Google me, or you look up any of my personal social media handles, you'll see a lot about my businesses, whether it's Collectively Digital, my marketing agency, or Sid Technologies, my tech firm. So that's where the space from the content on my personal brand, on my personal pages are. And I also address issues that affect women. So I talk about those issues, things that I'm passionate about. Again, I let my passion lead me and with my social media, my business, my personal relationship, my passion is driving a lot of that. So in terms of social media, how do you want to be perceived? When I started, it was really Facebook, Twitter. But when I started, I was also doing background checks, using social media for background checks, right? So it's a little different now for you all in high school. Your social media, how you use social media is different than how social media was being used back in the day. Back in the day, an employer sees you twerking, that's an immediate fire, not hire. Today, that could be a that could be a marketing campaign for somebody, for some brand, oddly enough. But I mean, it's different today. So how do you want to be perceived? What are you passionate about? Right? And be creative about your social media. Like, your social media should be an extension of who you are or who you want to be.
Great. Now this next question is for Brian, specific to real estate. We often hear real estate being the vehicle that can change the trajectory of someone's life financially.
I was fortunate. I got my first deal in my first month during a tough time of the year, which is usually the Christmas time, the winter ones. And if you want to be an investor, you may not necessarily need a license. A lot of people assume, well, I need to get my real estate license. Well, your real estate license allows you to represent buyers and sellers, to represent other people in transferring real estate, buying and selling. And if you want to be an investor, it's probably best you don't have your license, because you're going to be expected by your broker, because you have to be with one for at least a couple of years before you can become your own person in this. They're going to want to make some money. And if you're investing and whatnot, that's not helping their firm, if you will. So being an investor, again, understand your purpose of that. What are you investing in? What are your long-term goals with it? In real estate, we are considered community leaders, because we do get involved in whatever change, whatever developments are going on in the community regarding businesses, where they're going to be placed, all of that kind of thing. Longevity, again, is you just have to have some thick skin. You have to be dedicated. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to make money, but you want to make consistent, gradual money, and it's good money. In the beginning, you're going to be like, what am I doing? But again, there's got to be that beginning, right? And I say the first 5 years in real estate, well, actually, first 3 years in real estate are your foundational years. That's when you're planting the seeds and you're building your foundation and you're branding yourself and establishing yourself and figuring out your niche, if you will. And then after, I think, about your 5th year, that's when you're pretty much established and things start to flow. You realize all that hard work is starting to pay off. Again, you're planting those seeds, and now you're starting to reap from that. You got to be consistent with it, though, because when you let up, you got to almost start over again. I've been there a couple times. And it's goal setting. So what are your long-term goals? Longevity helps with that, right? It's like, you're not going to be able to do it all in one day, but when you chop it up, like, okay, and this year I want to be able to do this, and this year I want to do that. It starts with daily goals, daily things to do, and weekly things to do, and monthly things to do. And when you set yourself with the mentality that I'm in business for myself, but I have to go to work, right? Because a lot of times freedom can be your worst enemy when you're trying to do this on your own. I've given the equivalent to high school, like a 9-to-5 job, and college, like being an entrepreneur. In college or in high school, where you got to be every day from 6 hours or whatever, and then you're out of there, and somebody's on your back about your homework or whatever. In college, you might have a class this day, no class that day, 2 classes this day. Professors are throwing work at you. They could care less about the other professors' workload, but it's about getting it done, right? And so you're project orientated more, so you're not trading hours for the dollar. So, there's so many different things that you kind of set your mind in the right direction. You'll be able to be around for a while, because you're setting yourself like, okay, this is a business. I got to be here every day to do this. It's, like you said, 24/7. It's not even 10 to 10. It's 24/7. You're thinking about it all the time. You're on all the time, no matter where you are. Somebody's paying attention. You just have to be the part. It's a lifestyle. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question?
Oh, perfect. I've never heard the high school to college analogy. I like that.
And it sounds like you build a lot of skills in that 3 years, with project management and all of that too. So that's pretty cool.
Well, in real estate, there's so many different things to do. Like, of course, I'm a real estate agent. I'm helping buyers buy homes. I'm helping sellers sell homes, but I've also bought places. I've been a landlord. I've flipped homes. I've done the commercial leasing, all the different things. And in project management, when you're flipping a house, that's a whole nother, that's bananas. It's bananas. It's crazy, but.
Bananas, I like that.
All right, perfect. Appreciate you, Brian. Now, this is for Ari and Jasmine. Acknowledging that everyone's path is different, what steps would you suggest a young person take to not only get involved in technology and or data, but become a successful entrepreneur in the space?
I would say be open. Be open to, just be open to, there are different things that you can do in tech. There are different tasks, there are different roles in tech. It's not just coding, one, and you don't necessarily have to, I think people have a lot of idea about the tech space that involves you being in a dark space coding, or But their project management is a huge role and incredibly needed in the tech space. Data analytics, there's product managers, there's plenty of different roles in tech that you can bring value to. From a marketing standpoint, you could be a marketer, social media specialist for a marketing firm. So be open to trying different roles too. You don't have to stick to one. And if you're invited to an internship, apply to internships. I think junior achievement, there's MN, Minnesota STEM Partners, there's Aspirations for Computing. There's a lot of local programs actually that offer you internships where you can actually test out these tech roles at Land O'Lakes, at the state of Minnesota, at Hennepin County. There are a number of local enterprises that are looking to work with high school students actually.
My suggestion is get out there, try some stuff. Get around some builders. I mean, I can think of one of the first things I would do to experiment, because I'm the M of data, I'm the mathematics with analytics. So I was like, let me go to some hackathons, because some people feel like, okay, if they're not the developer, if they're not the coder, if they're not the person that's like, what do I do? And there's so much. I mean, there are even some programs that have STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So get out there, get around some builders, get into some hackathons, and that'll give such an open view. Also, for folks that are thinking about starting their own tech businesses, those builders are where you can meet some of your first teammates. There's a group here called Hack the Gap, and the first year that they had a hackathon, the team that I was with, we ended up winning that hackathon. We hacked a Star Wars headgear space. It was like a Star Wars toy thing, and basically we created a tool where students elementary and down could self-meditate themselves. So if there was maybe a student having a tantrum, we programmed it so that they could actually see the visuals. We created just a simple blue circle and red circle that would warp with the amount of data waves that were coming through. And then that was our tool. But not only just us, it's like all the other builders in the space. I was still to this day, and that hackathon was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, friendships with those women. And those women have gone on to do things within corporate, within agencies, they built their own things. And also keep your quirky big ideas. Because I was just in LA, and there's this, or Santa Monica, there's this robotic machine called Coco Robot. And it's funny to look at because it's a little robot that has a bin. Think of your picnic basket. You ordered some food and then you put it into a picnic basket, and then that little robot just drives down the street, turns the corner, and it's doing it on its own. So it's delivering the food to you. That takes a quirky mind to think about something like that. What if there was a robot driving down the street? Everybody has those wild conversations, but tech people need those wild thinkers, because that's how you get a Coco going down the street delivering food. And so be open, get out there, get around some builders, and you'll be surprised what it inspires you just to do and the connections and friendships that you make within the space.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. So I'm from an AI space, I'm a non-technical founder. So what I brought to the equation with my startup, I'm a creative strategist. So if you think about that, there's no tech involved with being a creative strategist. But my creative strategy came up with this big idea for SIT, right? What if we can use AI to help people become more aware of their unconscious bias? And then what if we can use AI and data science to help officers de-escalate a situation? And then, what if we can use this technology to give police chiefs a heads up when an officer is, suspect or, going off the deep end? Or what if we can use this technology to reduce the amount of wrongful conviction? What if we can use this to accelerate exonerations, right? So it's all creative. It's all in my head. It's a big idea. And then, you meet people. I'm glad you mentioned Hack the Gap. You meet people through hackathons. Hackathons are great, by the way. My first hackathon was Code Switch, which is in partnership with Hack the Gap, and met Caroline, met some people there who I'm still connected to, who I even reach out to ask questions about data and AI space and all of that. So, yeah.
I see the passion. I love it. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and take questions from the audience. If you're tuning in virtually, please feel free to type in your question and they'll be accounted for. And so we'll get started. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand.
I have a couple of questions.
That's a good. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
They're speaking on work-life balance, basically.
Right. I'll go ahead and repeat the question for you real quick. And so it was, what are some of the habits that our entrepreneurs do regularly? And are there any habits that young people can start doing now? Okay.
Well, as I was beginning, they're speaking to work-life balance. So every day, I believe that you should have a routine weekly, no matter what, and make sure you're managing your time, right? Time management is everything. So those create the habits. Those will create the routine that'll keep you proficient and keep you efficient. So when business comes your way, you're ready. Again, and I can give you another analogy, like in real estate, it's like being a fireman. You got to go when the bell rings. You just never know when it's to happen. But if you're ready, you can adjust. So routine is everything, and make sure you block out for yourself, for personal. You have to balance it out, whether it's working out or time with your family, whatever it is in your life that you like to do, biking, whatever, hiking, all those kinds of things. Make that balance so that you're living as well, not just working.
It's a different question now, I think, work-life balance, than what we used to have. It's like younger folks, like, I can't even imagine, like, what does it feel like to be in COVID and then, like, go into what is that even like? Because you don't even have that same barrier. It's like, it's almost like, I feel like, honestly, the generation is going to teach us more about work-life balance because they're just going into the option of freedom and openness. So the discipline there, though, I still think it exists because you have to be even more disciplined. And I think now it's more of like discipline to pause on creating because you can create so much. Discipline to make sure you're showing up because you could travel anywhere and go anywhere. And also finding your rhythm. One of the things that really motivates me every morning to get up is who I'm answering to. So like as an entrepreneur, I think the outside view is like you can create your own schedule. You don't have to answer to anybody. It's like you always are answering to somebody. You're answering to your teammates, you're answering to a client, you're always answering to somebody. And so for me, I think when I disconnect emotionally from the business in some ways where I don't treat it as a luxury, I treat it as if like, if I was taking care of a client's brand or I was taking care of a client's thing, what would I do? That's gonna help you. That's the thing that'll have you up at like 5 a.m. till 3 at the next night because you're just like, I'm so motivated here. But it's also the thing that'll have you pause and say, I need to take a step back because I have to show up for people. And I've burnt myself out over the past couple months because I haven't spoken up. Like, these are just hypotheticals, but it's like, if you were to do those things, you're not showing up as your most authentic self for other people. And also as an entrepreneur, you're setting that example too. So it's like, if you want to be a solo, then be a solo. But if you're starting to speak to other people, make sure that you're setting an example for what you want your future team to work life and how you want them to actually build together based off of how you work.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot from both of you. I have no work-life balance, so I'm just gonna put that out there right now. So yeah, but one of the habits that I started to implement a few weeks ago is having a morning routine, and that's really kind of helped me out. So far, I'm gaining a lot out of it. Starting with making a list of the things that I'm grateful for, right? And then followed by what goals I have to that day. What are my goals today? Followed by what one thing do I need to do this week, achieve this week to move my business forward? What one thing do I need to achieve this week to move my personal life forward? Whether it is go to yoga 3 times this week, or make sure I file my taxes. Whatever the case is, what one thing do I need to do to move forward with my business and personal life?
Well, in addition, like what you were saying, I found it very helpful to do a things to do list daily. Whether you're adding gratitude to it in the beginning is perfect, but knowing what you're getting ready to do the next day. Because if you take control of your day, it won't take control of you, and you end up everywhere else all over the place. And your people, your customers or clients or whatever, they're the ones suffering. And so it's a matter of just doing the schedule and the things to do list, I think, daily, and that will help you head in the right direction. You can set your goals, you can plan your the work-life balance.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of like the importance of a good project management tool. Like for instance, we utilize Jira, and that keeps track of all of our tasks. It's more technical with us being a tech group, but having a solid project management system is important. And if you can, making sure there's like someone outside of you that you can bounce an idea off of. Even if you are a solo entrepreneur, you don't have a co-founder or a team, making sure you have a mentor or a group, somebody that in a group that can keep you accountable to what needs to be done is good.
And I'll add to that. For me, gratitude has helped me it's helping me rewire my brain a little bit, because the space that I exist in can be an incredibly negative space. There's a lot of trauma involved in that space. So, waking up after I've watched, some traumatic video, what am I grateful for? And to have that positive there for my day, begin my day with positive. Also, and I said this earlier, it's never too early for high school students to really tap into LinkedIn. One of the things I did from early on as a college student was learn that whatever article, whatever speaker that came into class that resonated with me, that kind of connected with me, or that I look up to, I look them up on LinkedIn and I connect with them. And when I get the nerve to ask them, follow them long enough to kind of understand what their thing is, and if there's someone that I feel that would be great to be a mentor, I actually ask. I send them a note on LinkedIn. Can I get a call? Can I do a coffee? And you would be surprised that a lot of people are actually into mentors, especially younger people in high school and college. There are a lot of executives out there that would be more than happy to talk to you.
Thank you. So what was one piece of advice that you were given that you still follow today, and how has it impacted you in your journey?
Third grade teacher was super impactful. Miss Lauren was her name. Because I was an immigrant, I got teased a lot. You can't tell, I had a really strong Nigerian accent. And I was bullied to hell in school. So one of the things my third grade teacher told me was really around criticism, right? Be open to criticism and not to receive everything as being made fun of, and so even when I'm being made fun of, and this is all her doing, I somehow find something in that in what was said that I could take to improve myself, right? Whether it's negative or not, like, use everything to improve yourself. Constructive criticism, really negative criticism, whatever it is, it may be true or not true, but what can you derive from it to improve yourself? I think that was the most impactful thing that has followed me all my life. So people will say all kind of things to me, and in the moment, I may not receive it, but when I step away and reflect, there's always something that I pull from it. So, yeah.
I have a couple of pieces of advice. One from my parents, of course. It was pretty much, when you start something, finish it. See your way through it. I mean, a lot of people start to, oh, never mind. Start to, never mind. I mean, you got to start somewhere with something. And so that was kind of why I'm still here as well, because there was a lot of tough days in the beginning, and that was enough to be like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. But you got to see your way through. Another piece, too, they always were kind of like, you don't really need to focus on falling back on anything, right? A lot of people have that attitude of, I need something to fall back on. That makes sense when you're doing something that has a short life, like athletes, for instance. Their careers aren't that long, so they do need something for later on. However, you know, in the entrepreneurship, the other piece of advice I've heard somebody I admire talking, Denzel Washington, when he says, you rather fall forward, not backwards. So if you're reaching for something, that's the best way. My dad used to call it tripping up the stairs. You know, you're moving forward, nevertheless, but you learn. It's never a loss. Whatever is going on, you're learning from that experience, right? So.
Financially, the best advice I got at the start of my business was, one, the rule of thirds. So a third whatever money you get in for your business, a third for savings, a third for operations, and a third to pay out the folks, and budget accordingly that way. To stop doing my taxes. That was like from the get-go. I had a mentor that was like, you no longer are doing your personal taxes from the beginning. Business-wise, really good advice. Do what you're passionate about. At the beginning of the business, it was a lot of me doing a lot of the analytics and things until we hired some folks out, and then Cassie doing a lot of the technical pieces. But a mentor was like, you have to get to the point where you're doing what you're really passionate about. And for me, that's about, of course, building the product or new features and concepts within the data platform, or even the creative and branding and marketing. Like, those are my favorite pieces. But every now and then I still do find myself like overlooking, like, does this actually fit the Monacat brand? Because now I'm trying to take this brain and infuse it into other people. Like, that's the longevity I want. I want the team to own it, where it's like, yep, maybe it's not quite how I would do it, but it's a Monacat way of doing it. It's how our team would do it. And that takes a lot of trust to do that. And then personal best advice I got was take a day off. So I'm big on Saturdays, I do not open my computer. Unless it's like I'm really, really needing to do something. Saturdays, I don't open my computer, I see friends, I go out, I do whatever. Sundays, I can't promise that because I have to prepare for Monday. But on a Saturday, don't talk to me about work. And I think that, like, also difference too, like, I'm very much a person when I'm like in work, I'm in work. But if you catch me at like 6 o'clock, I'm probably going to shut off my brain. And I think that's also because being an analyst and being a data person, I'm very heady and I'm very focused when I'm thinking. So I really try to, like, if I'm with you, I'm with you. I'll try to shut down my phone because it's just like I'm in there so much. And for me, like, creatively and strategically, I feel like I just don't serve as much if I'm constantly in everything everybody else is doing. It's like I've got to have some separation to just be very present in a very non-present technical world.
Thank you.
I apologize for all the 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. emails I sent.
And our
What is your most satisfying entrepreneur moment so far?
I would say it's continuous. It's like I said, you know, I'm part of the DEI group with SPAR, St. Paul Association of Realtors, as well as for the company of Coldwell Banker Realty, and we're promoting this big thing about bridging the gap of home ownership, right? In Minnesota, we have the worst disparity as far as black home ownership versus white people. So we're at 76%. That's a huge difference, and we're the worst in the country with it. So in my 30 years, I'm realizing I've been a good contributor to help, but the gap is obviously still wide. But the most satisfying part is to be enlisted to help people do this, be part of that positive journey in their life. And when you're at a closing table and people are crying and they're happy about this new accomplishment, because like I said, I'm helping a lot of first generation homeowners, and that's rewarding. That's like priceless.
I think mine is split between two. So the first moment is, so we had this summit called the Yellow Summit, which in our first year, as a thing to get out into the community, we did these we did these data for art workshops, where we talked to art groups about data and tech, brought in like a performer, food, different things like that. And that evolved to the Yellow Summit in 2019 and 2018 before COVID hit. And so the second one, the first one was here over at Vandalia Tower, and the second one actually was in my hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we partnered with an animated studio. We had some animated speakers from really, really incredible groups. We had some tech folks, some data folks, we had some architectural speakers, performances, and it wasn't big. It was like maybe 250 as far as the attendance. But for me, it was such a proud moment, because like our team, like everybody went to Fort Wayne, and it was just so nice to like, when you move away from home and then to come back and like bring something like that you've been working on in another market. And from there, it's like you start to think about, well, what other opportunities can you bring back to your hometown? To me, like that's what it's all about, like the circular nature of it. Like, how can you start to pod your idea in markets that you really care about to really affect things? So that would be the first one. And then of course the second one is us going from a service group to now the Sunset.io platform as our first data platform. To be able to get that out to folks, have it be really simple, connecting with Eventbrite, Google Analytics, Shopify, and CSV. Again, there are QR codes that I guess we can share with the audience so that they can get that code as well. But that is such an accomplishment for us, because it really started off as just an idea in 2019, and for us to build it through COVID and still have service work, it's just like the fact that we made it through and we bootstrapped the platform completely is really incredible.
Okay, so the most rewarding thing for me right now is, with my venture, Sid Technologies, the thing that I'm most proud about is our journey this last 3 years. You know, from launching or establishing the startup in 2019, August of 2019, through summer of last year, I really struggled to gain access and get accepted into local programs, accelerators, and all of that. A lot of the programs didn't understand what the idea was, I was having to explain over and over or find the right language to better articulate what the idea of SID was. And then in the summer of last year, 2021, got into MIT's incubator, MIT Solve, after nearly 2 years of being rejected. and almost giving up, like, okay, maybe I don't have an idea. Maybe I'm not a tech person. Maybe I'm not the person to bring the solution to life. So being accepted into an MIT program, we made finalists in 2 of their programs, actually, which for me validated the idea, validated my skill set, validated my creativity, and the fact that I could innovate regardless of what was being said in this space. Second thing is, I was able to grow my team. For all that time, it was just me. It was just me pushing things forward, me being creative, applying, speaking to people, engaging in the MIT program. So this year we were able to grow the team. We added a COO as well as a CTO who's a lead engineer. And now we're building. We're planning on launching a pilot in the fall. We have 4 agencies that are interested in participating, which for me, I'm still in shock from it because we received so much pushback around our police use case, and I didn't think that we would be able to get our tech into the agency. But this is the key to pivoting, being open to changing, being flexible. If one door shuts, be willing and open to pivoting and changing direction. There may be a rock over here. You might have to go around that rock. So, swerve to the
around
left.
the mountain.
Exactly. Be willing to swerve. Right? And that's what we had to do. We went from a police use case to a litigation use case, and that litigation use case opened doors for us. We have state prosecutor's office that we're talking to. We have DOJ, we have the Innocence Project. So we have pivoted and gotten into a space that we didn't anticipate that pivot would lead us to. So, yeah.
All right, perfect. With 5 minutes left, I think we have time for one more question if we have one from the audience. If not, I have one I can ask. All right. So the last question is, are there any resources in the Twin Cities that you would tell a young entrepreneur to leverage? And are there any resources in the Twin Cities specific to young Black entrepreneurs that you would advise to leverage?
I'd say the Minnesota Chamber is actually a really underutilized resource. They actually just came out with an app. They do a report every single year. I feel like the MN Chamber of Commerce is not just useful for starting entrepreneurs, it's underutilized by a lot of entrepreneurs. If you want to think about markets and who are the key players within certain markets, there are folks on there that have paid their membership. Of course, with that membership comes a certain amount of visibility, but also being able to section things out. So lists, I think, are always the thing of who do I talk to? Who would be interested? And they can give you a good amount of lists. You may have to go through and manually scrape, or if you have a scraper, you can go through and scrape some things. But it gives you a great starting point and understanding the ecosystem, along with some resources that are pinged off the site. But a great spot to start for research. And of course, with me being a data person, make sure you're up on your national statistics, the US e-commerce websites. Make sure to focus on those, understand the trends of your market, and understand where things are going so that you can be prepared and move accordingly.
Well, in the real estate industry, I think there's the trade. Most places have trade associations. So I would begin with, there's SPAR. It's St. Paul Area Association of Realtors. There's MAR, Minneapolis Association of Realtors. And then there's MNAR, Minnesota Association of Realtors. There's NAR, the national one. And then there's others that are minority-based associations. So, you can start with the associations. If you know of or have a family member or want to call me, we can sit down and talk about those kinds of things. Talk about the pathway, the process, again, discuss your purpose, and understand where you fit and where where to go from there.
For those interested in the tech space, there are a couple of local programs that you can reach out to. One of them I mentioned earlier, Minnesota STEM Partnership. There's the Minnesota Aspirations for Computing, which is for young women who are interested in the tech space. There's also Technovation and Code Savvy. Those are just a couple that just came to mind. But there are quite a bit of programs locally for high school students that you can tap into if you're interested in the tech space. Oh, there's Brand Lab too for those of you interested in marketing.
Perfect, thank you. And as we're wrapping up, I want to give our entrepreneurs the opportunity to share what you're working on or what you have coming up in the near future that do a shameless brag about, or something that we can be involved in.
Yeah, so there's these QR codes, and I'll figure out how to get them to the folks online. But the code is SUNHUMAN, it's SUNHUMMAN, and you can go to the Sunset.io website, SUNSETT2Ts.io, and there you can get a 2-month free trial to trial out the platform. Get into it. It's really incredible. It saves a lot of time. Instead of having to pop into every single platform, you get all of your analytics in one place. But I'll share those QR codes for those online to get into that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of on the initiative with the Bridging the Gap of home ownership. So my team and I, we're kind of involved in that. Well, we are definitely involved in that, and we're going to be present at a lot more of the home stretch classes, which are required for first-time home buyers to take. It helps qualify for the first-time home buyer programs with their mortgages. They get a lot of good assistance and whatnot, so we're there doing that. So that's pretty much the project I'm on now. But that's an ongoing thing that's I kind of been doing unknowingly and now more purposely, if that makes sense.
I would just say follow me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to anyone. If you're a high school student, follow us. Our SID Technologies as well on LinkedIn, on Twitter. What we're building right now is not really open to the public, so I can't really plug it. Unless you're in the public space or you're in the government space and you're interested, I'm happy to talk to you more about our pilot program in the fall. But the pilot program is for municipalities, police agencies, and litigators. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right, thank you. And so, with that, I would like to give Jasmine, Ari, and Brian a round of applause. And say thank you for joining us, and thank you for the work that you're doing.